What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some launch impressions for Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy, an indie CRPG that launched yesterday just from the time of this video, and a game that I've been keeping an eye on for quite some time as it entered early access around this time last year, in fact, but it's finally hit its 1.0, of course. Now, with that in mind, they only announced the release date like last week before just kind of putting it out there for everybody. Now, this was also the product of a Kickstarter that I backed as well, so I didn't get like a review key or anything here, I just have the version from that. And for that reason and a couple others, it's a little difficult to drop a full review for this anytime soon, mostly because they've also got a 1.1 update already planned, which is going to bring in some more content in the form of one of its Kickstarter stretch goals, the Cursed City, I believe it's called. So long story short, it's going to take me a while to get around to this one in full, but it is still an indie CRPG project that I think is really interesting, and as such, I wanted to shine a bit of a light on it here. So Swordhaven, if you didn't know, is developed by Atom Team, which is the people behind Atom RPG True to Grad, things like that. And whereas those games were inspired by the likes of the early Fallout titles, the Swordhaven title here is actually inspired by the Infinity Engine games, which shows up in basically all of the ways in which the game presents itself to the player, though probably worth a mention with that comparison that this is low fantasy, so you're not going to be using things like magic, but you will be uncovering an iron conspiracy if that wasn't on the nose enough for you. But before you get started with your adventure, you first, of course, have to make a character. So let's talk a little bit about that. First thing you're going to pick is your background. This is going to give you an initial bonus to one of your attributes as well as some of your skills. From there, you pick your actual attributes. These more or less do the things you would expect them to do. You'll have a few points to spend in each. Things like intellect are going to give you extra skill points per level, by the way, which is something we're about to get into with skills. So skills have both your base level in them, but as you hit certain milestones up to 199, you will actually get bonuses for those skills as well. And while not an official distinction, they seem to be mostly divided up in between direct combat skills, social skills, as well as like crime and craftsmanship type of stuff, and as such you can use those skills in-game, ideally to seek out extra quest solutions, which is something they're trying to push for pretty hard here, which given the nature of their previous work isn't a terribly big surprise, mind you, but things like persuasion, intimidation, even haggling might present extra opportunities for you to explore certain quests, and that's actually highlighted pretty well in the game's first area, Clam's Reach, as one of the main quests there sees you trying to settle a feud between some barbarians and the town itself. And there's a few different ways you can tackle that depending on your build and the setup that you've got going on as an example. But right after skills, you pick up distinctions. Distinctions are interesting because they are your typical, like, take a positive but incur a negative type of thing. You don't have to pick these at all, you can just skip it, but things like heavy-handed, for example, will give you a pretty sizable bonus to strength and combat skills, but comes at the expense of things like stealth, lockpicking, that kind of stuff. Eagle-eyed gives you an incredible chance to hit with ranged, but you have a chance to panic anytime anything hits you in combat, just to give a couple of examples. Now from there you pick your abilities, so depending on your level up to 125 with individual weapons, you can get skills that you can learn and apply with them. And in the absence of things like magical abilities, this will be kind of how you customize what a character does based on their individual skills. Following on from that, you then have appearance, so this is not exactly a gigantic budget game, as you would probably have guessed from the Kickstarter, and to that end, the models are not exactly the most impressive things, but I will say they are improved since the beginning of early access. So there's that at least. Now you're going to end this by picking your difficulty. So straight away, this game is a little on the challenging side when it comes to normal, like you need to get a party under your belt, get your gear situation sorted out. So some of the early combat encounters can give you some trouble if you're not prepared for it, so certainly keep that in mind when you're choosing difficulty, but the gist of it is basically that on easy, you get a bunch of extras every time you level up and you gain more experience. So like, you get 50% extra XP XP, you get an extra 15% chance to hit, you get extra 10 skill points every level, that kind of stuff. Normal just gives you your regular ability point every level, and then hard is kind of the opposite. You'll take some penalties. You'll earn 25% less experience, enemies will deal more damage, your party members can die if they go down, and you only get an ability point every other level. So some things to know, and then on top of that you can enable Iron Man mode if you so desire, but then you'll jump into the actual game, which involves you taking a ship for a variety of different reasons to an island called Nova Draconia, a relatively rough frontier area that has only been recently tamed in any capacity, but even then not by much, and unsurprisingly, given the name of the title, there is a conspiracy at play here that you're going to unravel, but it kind of gets started on the ship, which is a text event on the way there. You'll ultimately come into possession of an amulet that was thrusted into your possession, and you're told to go to the city of Swordhaven to, of course, pass it on to the person who's supposed to have it, but this is where things get rocky because relatively quickly, actually, you'll find that people are looking for this thing, and you're going to get drawn into various conspiracies along the way, but the good news is you'll be able to resolve a bunch of different quests in a bunch of different ways, which is where the fun of a CRPG lies. But that's not the only portion. We do have combat in this, of course. This game does support either real-time with pause or turn-based. You can toggle it just like we've seen in a couple of other games here and there, and it works much the same as you would expect it here. There's a basic AI setup that you can manage for real-time with pause, by the way, or if you want to go full turn-based, that's fine too. Though I'm a little too early to talk on combat too very much. The gist of it basically seems to be use your best weapon and abilities against enemies to try to give yourself the tactical advantage necessary to continue. Crafting can help out a lot here, doing things like giving yourself some potions, or with a deeper investment, I believe you can even craft things like stronger weapons, that kind of thing. Though I will say, when I do finally get around to properly reviewing this one, how the combat evolves will be of interest to me. Here in the early game, it's mostly just trying to stay alive as you bash things, as you really don't have too many more options besides a couple of starting abilities, that kind of thing, and there are items you can make use of, like traps and the like, but those aren't exactly plentiful. Now, you will have a little bit of help in the form of companions. My understanding is you have a total of a 5-member party, that is to say 4 companions plus you. I assume there may be more than that, especially if it's based on the Infinity Engine games, but something I will have to wait and find out for myself, I imagine. Speaking of help more generally, though, it's my understanding there's also factions later on in the game, or guilds that you'll be able to join, like the Thieves Guild as an example. And then there's also like special boss encounters, which isn't too much of a surprise. Even Atom RPG had those. And on top of things like those guilds, the story itself is meant to be non-linear from what I understand, or at least in terms of how you explore the world map and the like. I believe like the backgrounds or something like that also has a unique quest or something associated with it. Bringing that all together, though, I would say Swordhaven Iron Conspiracy mostly just seems like a fun time, if, of course, you're into indie CRPGs, I suppose. But beyond that, I'll have to make some time to dig a little deeper into this one and explore all of its different content and whatnot, which is going to take me a while. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is more content and things to come in some planned updates like 1.1 as an example, and so I would probably want to wait for those to begin with, and it also doesn't help that there's quite a bit of other stuff I have going on at the moment that I may as well finish in the meantime, and so hard to say when I'll have a full review for this done. It probably won't be soon, but given that I did back it on Kickstarter, I am obviously looking forward to jumping in and playing through the rest of it, and I wanted to shine a light on that in the meantime, which is the purpose of this video, of course. So hopefully you enjoyed that look at this title. If you did, by all means, let me know about it down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.